Hello! Hope you guys are doing amazing. I'm super excited to introduce you guys to Dr. Julie Grondin. She's a postdoc at the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and we actually grew up together in Deep River. Went to high school together long time ago. But I thought it'd be a really amazing opportunity to share with you guys her story because she is has become you're a full-time vegan, right? Yeah. So a full-time vegan, and as you guys know, being vegetarian or vegan is one of the best things you can do for the environment and to make the world a better place. So we're super excited to interview her today. So what we'll do is we'll dive right into it. So Julie, what inspired you to become a vegan? Let's start there.
Well, first I want to say thank you. And also it's really exciting to get to talk to other people who are like-minded. And I don't really get to talk about this stuff too often with people who are interested in talking about it. So thank you. So my story, it's interesting to always hear these things because I always ask other vegans, like if I run into them in the world, I'm like, oh, tell me everything. Like why did you become, it's such a cool, everybody's story is so different. So mine is actually health related at first, I sort of experimented a little bit with different diets. When I was in grad school, the words vegetarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan, raw vegan, like all these different kinds of diets were popping up. And I was just interested in trying them out. So I had this like experiment where I had done one different diet for every day of the week. And I thought that was really cool and interesting and challenging and got me thinking about things. And at the end of that week, fortuitously, I was at the local video store and there was a free rental. One of the chefs in town at a local farm-to-table restaurant had basically paid for everybody who wanted to watch this video to watch it. And it's called Food Inc., which you may have seen that documentary. It just covers the industrialization of food production in the world, and does contain some quite horrifying graphic slaughterhouse type content. And I just cried my eyes out the whole time. And I went vegetarian like right away. And I was vegetarian for a few years. Unfortunately, out of convenience and for other reasons, I did end up going back to eating meat and stuff. And then I moved to Lethbridge and I always thought in my back of my head, like, oh, I should really go back. Like I felt so much better and I felt more connected to what I was eating and my food and what I was putting in my body. And then I was still dealing through grad school and in Lethbridge with migraines, like quite horrible migraines. My dad and my grandmother and my aunt get them. So partially it's genetic, but since we don't really know what causes migraines, what triggers them, a lot of that can also be food related. So, susceptible things that make you susceptible and then things that trigger you. So I'd gone through all of this trial and error trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And I always thought maybe there was a food component to it. And long story short, I tried a whole bunch of different things and landed on sugar, like processed white refined sugar. So I cut that out of my diet for like a year. And it was sort of maybe helping, but nothing too dramatic. But in that time, I still wanted to eat something sweet. So I started looking up refined sugar-free like desserts. And I'm sure as you may have seen, or anybody who hasn't, what I would maybe call alternative diet, like if you have celiac disease or if you don't eat soy or whatever, all of that stuff kind of gets lumped together. So if you look up a recipe that's refined sugar-free, chances are it's also dairy-free, egg-free, soy-free, nut-free, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of went, and it just happened to be vegan. And I was like, well, I don't really care about that. I just, want to eat dates or maple syrup or whatever. So I actually ended up, over the course of experimenting with different types of sweeteners, ended up buying different cookbooks. So the Thug Kitchen cookbook is one of them. And then Oshi Glows, which is another really good one. Both happen to be plant-based.
I have Oshi Glows too.
What's that?
I have Oshi Glows as well.
It's so good. I just got my mom the Oshi Glows I think it's called Every Day, the second one. Anyway, both really, really good cookbooks. So I got those and started playing around, and I love to cook and I like to experiment with food. And, also, I always had this idea, this thought that a plant-based diet was probably healthier because it does eliminate a lot of, aside from meat and and fish, of course, also dairy and eggs, and anything that comes from an animal. So honey, for example, or any other things like that. And because dairy is known as a sort of an allergen to some people, like it's people that get really sensitive to dairy, or it affects their skin or their digestion. I thought maybe for my migraines and for general health, it would be a good idea to adopt a plant-based diet anyway. So over the course of about a month, I was experimenting and incorporating more and more plant-based meals into my diet. And I was cruising through Netflix one day, and I came across a lot of, like, the word vegan was rattling around in my day-to-day life. So I found a documentary called Vegucated, which you may have seen, which is this woman who's vegan basically challenges 3 random people with different types of lifestyles to adopt a vegan diet for 6 weeks. And then they explore the reasons why people go vegan and stuff. And I, again, bawled my eyes out at some of that footage and started looking at other documentaries, which I've since watched I've been vegan for almost 2 years. On July 1st, it'll be my 2nd vegan anniversary. In that time, I've watched a bunch of them. Cowspiracy is one I'm positive you've seen, dealing with the environmental impact of animal agriculture, especially the use of water, which is insane. And it's ridiculous. And then some of the other ones, which it's probably the most violent thing I think it exists out there. It's horrific. It's called Earthlings, which if anyone can get through, I can't even watch the trailer. It's just like how we treat animals generally, aside from industrial factory farming, which I think everyone can understand and agree on is pretty horrible. And just how we treat animals generally. And I, like, my cat's right here. Like, I looked at him and I looked at myself really, and I thought, I claim to be an animal lover and someone who cares about the environment and cares about my health. And all of these things are pointing towards plant-based in each case. And the reasons or excuses that I would come up with didn't really cut it anymore. I couldn't come up with a valid, factual, evidence-based backed reason not to anymore. And the only reasons I was coming up with was, I don't want to change. Everything tastes too good to stop eating. And against all of this huge body of evidence and this footage with what I was seeing with my eyes, it just sort of felt hypocritical to, like, I couldn't come up with a good reason not to anymore. And I just also felt so great, and like my conscience was cleared, and I knew that I was doing something that felt right for myself and the environment and the animals. So it just sort of worked out that way.
So you kind of just like, it was a journey for you to, like, from like starting with it and then experimenting and then realizing that's something that really spoke to you and you felt strongly about living by those principles that you believed in.
Totally.
Yeah, because that's something like I strongly believe, and I think like our entire team at Water Wellness Project really believes the same thing, that, like, we have to live by our principles in life. And, like, if we believe something that we think is important for the world, important for our health, if it's that important to us, we have to live by those principles. And, like, every action we have can have a huge impact, right, on the world. It's just, it's amazing what each and every one of us can do.
It's crazy that, we can say like, using up a lot of water when you run the tap for too long that's so bad. But if you don't act on that and you don't make your money speak for you, how you spend your money, you have a huge impact. And collectively, if more and more people do it, then the impact is greater. But making your morals and your actions match, it feels so good. It feels, and not in a like I'm better than everyone way, but just really, it feels right. It just feels like you're taking one less guilty thing out of your brain. It feels really good.
Yeah, and I mean, and the truth, like we'll kind of get into this in more detail, but like the thing is like becoming vegetarian or vegan is actually one of the most effective things you can do in terms of stopping global warming, reducing water usage. Like it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I don't think people realize that. Maybe a really great documentary I would direct people to, and I'm sure you would as well, is Cowspiracy, which is a and I've heard a lot of controversy about the exact numbers that they use in that documentary, but For example, the documentary says that 51%, I think over 50% of the greenhouse gases in the world are created by animal agriculture. And then, some people will come back and say, well, actually, no, it's more like 20%. But even 20%, like, okay, let's take the lowest estimate of that and assume that that's true. And maybe it's in between. I think that is impossible to, let's look at like how much water you use when you shower. Is that really significant compared to how much water it takes to get a single pound of ground beef? It's kind of not even a contest, really. So yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah,
I wish more people knew.
It's a huge impact, and we don't necessarily think of like a lot of the water actually goes in terms of water usage and water waste. Like a lot of it goes in terms of producing like the food for the animals, things like that too, right?
That's the thing. And I always tend to come back to that, and people say, well, like, there's so many arguments against being vegan that come out of people that just maybe need to learn a little bit more about it or are not exposed to the information. And I say, okay, well, if you're really concerned about lands that are being used for crops, then you really should be concerned about animal agriculture, because most of the land that's used for growing grain is used for growing soy and corn and whatever to feed to animals.
Yeah.
So maybe not exactly all of that land is arable for human consumption, but couldn't we engineer and work on technologies that make that land more arable and use some of that land to feed people? We have a huge hunger crisis. Why aren't we feeding people some of that?
Yeah,
sure.
There's obviously a lot of arguments for and against, but I think the main thing is like, if we can do something about it, even for people just reducing by a small amount, like even if you're reducing, like obviously it's best if you can go all the way and do it. Like Rupa and I were, like, for those of you that don't know, we're the co-founders of Water Well-ness Project, and we're mostly vegetarian. I'm pretty much vegan. I eat a little bit here and there, but like Rupa recently, just like she really cut it out completely. Like we knew the health benefits and things like that, and I think we really saw the huge benefit of becoming vegetarian or going extreme vegan. We think it's really important for the environment, but I think even if you can't go all the way and commit 100%, like every little bit that people can do does make a difference. And it is, I think there's things we could talk about. Like I think we'll get into a lot of the challenges that people may think there are, and then that'll maybe make it a bit easier. I just want to say one statistic that I had here. So they say that the carbon, I'm just going to bring up my phone so I can read it. So the carbon footprint of a vegetarian diet is about half that of a meat lover's diet. So it's immensely beneficial if we can reduce, the amount of meat that we eat. Even a couple of days a week, if you can cut it out, or like little things that you can do in your day. And the small things do matter in this case. Yeah. So I guess let's get into now. What do you think about the rumor? There's a lot of people will say, if you are vegan, you can't get enough protein. So what do you have to say to that?
Can we just cut to a shot of laughing because it's or giggling? It is okay. It's a fair question. I think we've all, I was not born a vegan. Most vegans grow up non-vegan and then, make a decision to change. So we've all had that concern. I think it's fair, and let's educate people. Let's talk about it. For sure. So you can absolutely get enough protein on a vegan diet. You can get complete protein on a vegan diet, no problem. All protein originates from plants. Plants are the only organisms that can fix nitrogen and take nitrogen from the soil and turn it into a part of an amino acid, which then becomes protein. The animals eat that protein. It gets recycled in their bodies and converted into muscle fiber, which then people will eat. So when you're eating protein, you're really just eating the vehicle or the vessel for that protein, which came from plants. If you look at the biggest herbivores on the planet, look at elephants, look at gorillas, look at hippos, they're all vegan for all intents and purposes. They're herbivores. Nobody is looking at a gorilla being like, I wonder where it gets its protein. Where do cows get their protein? If you're eating beef and you're like, beef protein comes from beef or chicken or whatever, where do those animals get their protein? Plants. So all of the nutrients that you need in your diet, macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, fat, as well as all the micronutrients, vitamins, and whatnot. Absolutely, no doubt, you can get from, with one exception, which we can talk about later, which is vitamin B12, you can get from plant-based diet, and all of the accredited diet associations, the American Diet Association, I can't remember the exact names, the Canadian one, all of the medical schools and dietetics associations out there have accredited vegan diets as appropriate for anywhere from pregnant and lactating women to infants, as soon as they're on, solid foods, liquid foods, all the way through to any stage of life, through to, adulthood. So there really isn't, including especially protein, there really isn't anything you can't get from a vegan diet. And if really protein deficiency was a thing, then there would be a bunch, like millions of, weak vegans kicking around all over. If you walked into any hospital, you would find protein deficient vegans everywhere. Mm-hmm. I would challenge anybody to walk into any hospital and look for protein deficient vegetarians and vegans. Instead, I think what you'd find is a lot of heart disease patients, and a lot of that comes from, maybe a lot of it is genetic, but a lot of it is also based on lifestyle. And I think, nobody's, that's a whole other topic, but, that you won't find it. Protein deficiency really happens in people who are chronically undernourished, malnourished. So you look at developing countries where people aren't meeting their caloric needs for the day. But if you are meeting your caloric needs, your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE, which is based on your age, your level of activity, your gender, and your weight, if you're getting enough calories, it's almost impossible to not get enough protein. If you ate nothing but rice and broccoli and you got your, say, 2,000 calories a day, you would get enough protein. And most people tend to think you need a lot more protein than you do, because we live in a protein obsessed culture. Turn on the TV, look at any yogurt commercial, any snack commercial, source of protein. There's protein in plants. If you are thinking about your diet the way that any person should think about their diet, whether you're non-vegan or vegan or vegetarian or whatever, you should be thinking about what's going in your body. And that includes all of your micronutrients. So if you're thinking at all about what's going into your body, then you'll be fine. It's really not a problem.
Yeah. What's your go-to source for protein? What do you commonly eat for protein in your day? I know obviously greens and things like that have protein, but I just mean, like, is there something you do for maybe a higher source of protein to add to your diet?
My diet is varied. A lot of the ways that a non-vegan would open the fridge and go, okay, I've got beef, I've got chicken, I've got pork, I've got, cheese, milk. Mine varies as well. It depends on what I have, what's on sale, what's in the fridge. I eat a good amount of soy based. So I eat tofu and tempeh and products, maybe like veggie ground round that are soy based. And you can go all the way into meat replacement products, like fake meats, for example, that most of them are a lot soy based if you want to go that direction, which you don't have to. So soy is a big one. I also eat a lot of beans, legumes, pulses, chickpeas, all of that, which we should all be eating anyway, because they're just nutrient powerhouses. They're full of fiber, they're full of potassium, they're full of all kinds of things. So I eat those. I tend to eat a lot of seitan, which is based on gluten. So it's basically gluten flour that's been worked to the point where what's left is pure gluten, which is a protein. So if you can take that gluten flour and make it into a loaf, and you can make it taste, you can put poultry seasoning in it, and it tastes like chicken if you want. You can put all kinds of seasonings in it, and you basically cook it and slice it and make whatever out of it. It has that chew that meat does. So I eat that. What else? Yeah. So yeah, beans, pulses, tofu. And then of course, some people will take whey powder, for example. So there are lots of vegan protein powders, if that's a convenient way for anyone to get protein. So I put a scoop of that in my smoothie in the morning and my oatmeal and stuff like that. So that's helpful, but not necessary.
Yeah, no, I think that people often don't think about all the legumes and all, because I, even before I became more of a vegetarian or a vegan, but even I ate a lot of those things before, but then you don't necessarily appreciate how much protein is in that, and what that can do. You don't need to be eating meat. Same thing. I eat a lot of soy products and and beans and I also eat a lot of chickpeas as well. So
life, they're so delicious.
Yeah. You can put
with like some spices and sprinkled on a salad or in a wrap or something, like chickpeas or hummus, of course. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that we think protein, and we've been brought up, or it's been sold to us, like, again, turn on the television, you know, pork, the other white meat, beef is what's for dinner, all that, chicken, egg council, like all of those talking about protein, we equate what's the protein in your meal to what's the meat in your meal. And that is partially marketing and just partially cultural upbringing and everything. But I think you just need to reprogram your brain a little bit and go protein equals, oh yeah, beans, like tofu, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's it's nice. There's lots of different types of beans out there that some of them I still haven't tried yet. So there's always new things to try as well, which is nice.
Yeah. And I guess like on to like kind of going a little forward with what we were saying about protein sources, like, can you give us an example of like a typical day? Like, just like, I know you said you vary your diet, but like just take a one day of your week that just passed and let us know like what you would eat.
I'll tell you what I had yesterday, and what I had this morning for breakfast. So I don't know what started this, but I've always eaten a smoothie for breakfast since grad school. It's a really great way to just jam nutrients in and just pack a bunch of stuff in and just drink it in the morning. It's just easy to make. So in my smoothie, I put a really nice ripe banana and a bunch of greens. So I have one of those 6-cup blenders and it just pack it full. So spinach, I buy the giant bag of spinach, and I always have spinach in the fridge. I jam a couple handfuls of that. If I have kale, like if kale's on sale, I'll just rip the leaves off of that really woody spine and jam those in there as well. So lots of greens. I put frozen blueberries in mine. I don't like super tart like raspberries in my smoothie. That's just my personal taste, and it keeps it cold and gives it a nice color and makes it taste nice. I put a scoop of protein powder in there, just out of habit. Although I have replaced that sometimes with hemp hearts, like nuts, and that is another good source of protein, right? And good fats and things. Hemp hearts are a really nice way to do that. What else did I put in it? I put flax, so for omega-3s and healthy fats, so flaxseed, ground flax, or flax oil if you have that. And then also, what else? Oh yeah, a scoop of peanut butter because it's delicious. And then some oats. So oats are a really good source of iron and zinc. So you think iron equals salmon or whatever. To me now, iron equals oats. So I put oats. I eat lots of oats. Helps with fiber content and all that as well. So, and then I just add water. And sometimes I put cinnamon in there, turmeric or whatever, just to help, or green tea powder. Like you can kind of jazz it up with whatever. So I have a smoothie in the morning, and that will usually keep me going till about 10, 11. Then I always have overnight oats, which are really easy to just bring to work. Like I just eat them sort of whenever I have a minute between experiments. So again, oats with a scoop of protein powder, frozen blueberries, and peanut butter, maybe some cinnamon, and then add almond milk to the top just to cover it. And then it sits overnight, and then it's basically just oatmeal the next morning, which is really good. So I have that. Yesterday for lunch, I had a soup. So I made like cream of broccoli soup, and the cream part came from cashew cream. So just cashews that are soaked and then blended make a really good creamy base for sauces and mac and cheese or whatever. So I added different ingredients in there to make it taste like cheese. And I was just following a recipe from a cookbook. And I had carrots and broccoli and stuff and onions in the soup. So I just blitzed that and I had soup. But most of the time I make a salad for lunch. It's just really easy to bring with me to work. So like spinach with, I like the crunch of cabbage. So I buy a bag of like that shredded cabbage and then shredded carrots. And so most people should know this anyway, whether you're vegan or not, but anytime you're eating any iron, to help with the absorption in your body, you want to couple it with vitamin C and eat those at the same time. So a really good way to do that is any iron that's from like a tofu or like a soy-based product, you can just add some red pepper, because red pepper is the highest vitamin C content of any food. So it's really easy to make sure you're getting enough iron and vitamin C together. So a salad I'll have like some red pepper in there, and then maybe some nuts or dried fruit or whatever if I have it. And then whatever my protein is that I have a batch of in the fridge. So if it's like roasted chickpeas or beans or some stir-fried tofu or some like veggie ground round that I've made into like taco meat, I put that on my salad, and then a dressing that I make out of oil, vinegar, whatever. So that's lunch. In the afternoon, I usually have a piece of fruit, like an apple, which is again really easy and convenient. Or like more oatmeal because I'm just obsessed. And then for dinner last night, I had tacos. So I had the little corn tortillas. I had some seitan that I had made previously that I just cut up and like fried up in a little bit of like a touch of oil, and then like made it into almost like Philly cheesesteak, like beef in gravy kind of, which is really good, with some cilantro and some salsa and some guacamole, lime. It was really good. But dinner, I know, I'm like, now I'm hungry because but sometimes I'll have like anything that anyone would have, I just make vegan. So sometimes it's like pasta. You can buy actually, I should have said this in the protein question. Mm-hmm. You can buy pasta that's made out of beans and lentils and all that stuff. And you should look at the protein content. It's kind of nuts. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I should grab it. But it's like, I buy it at Costco. It's like, it looks like spaghetti, and it's either made out of black beans, which is kind of horrifying looking, but it's really delicious, or a soybean. And the protein content is insane. It's like eating pasta there's no carbs. There's carbs in it, but it's mostly protein. Yeah. So that's really easy. I eat pizza, like roasted vegetables, roasted cauliflower. You can make buffalo cauliflower out of, which is like my favorite thing.
For your pizza, what do you put like instead of cheese? Do you use like cashew cheese or something, or? Sometimes
I will just buy vegan cheese, like Daiya shreds or Earth Island shreds. Better.
What do they make those sort of vegan cheeses from? I always wondered.
I can go grab the Daiya that's in the fridge. Let's go for a walk.
Okay, let's go to Journey.
I think there's a coconut oil in there, I think. Hang on, let me read the package. I'm just happy to have some. Filtered water, tapioca flour, canola / safflower oil, coconut oil, pea protein, that's where the protein comes from, salt, yeast, flavoring, xanthan gum to keep it together, yeast extract, and then coloring and stuff. This is what I'm talking about, this Daiya shreds. So I sometimes put those on. Otherwise, I sometimes just leave the cheese off, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm like, I just like vegetables on there, or I'll make like a ranch dressing instead. And then I'll like sprinkle that on there, like make like a barbecue chicken or chickpea pizza with like some like ranch sauce on there or some buffalo sauce. Pretty good. Yeah. I sometimes weird off. But actually, if you're ordering cheese or ordering pizza from places like, I don't know I can't remember if you have it in Ontario, but in Alberta, we have Panago pizza, and they have a vegan pizza that's delicious, and they use Daiya mozzarella. Yeah, and it's awesome.
Sounds delicious. Yeah, see, so it's so like obvious that like you're able to have such a delicious, like you're able to have such delicious meals, and it's not really like stopping you from enjoying, the food you eat,
Not at all. And it's always a bit, maybe shocking, or maybe just, I know that I'll be honest, when I wasn't vegan, I always thought vegan food was like dry lentils and like bland, cold tofu with like, vegetables. I just thought raw vegetable, like that's so boring. And, some people are raw vegan, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I'm not. So yeah, anything that you make, I can make vegan. Yeah. And you really don't want for anything. It's not a problem at all.
Sounds delicious. So now let's go into like the supplement side. So do you take any supplements to compensate for, having a vegan diet?
I'll say yes and no.
Oh, wait, I just want to preface this, that any advice that we give in this, please don't take it as medical advice. Go see your doctor, and we're just telling you from our experiences, and just want to put a disclaimer in there.
Absolutely. I'm a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. I do. I take a B12 supplement when I'm not eating things that are supplemented in B12. So vitamin B12 is the only vitamin or nutrient or anything like that cannot be found in plants, but that's not because it's inherently something that is found in animal products. So vitamin B12 is synthesized by soil-dwelling bacteria, and they, of course, live in the ground. And we would normally, if you think historically as humans, as animals, or if you eat animals or plants or whatever, you would just be eating stuff unsanitized directly off the ground, basically, or scavenging for food or whatever. and eating things that aren't super, super hyper sanitized like they are now. So you would be naturally ingesting those bacteria and then naturally getting your B12 that way. Because that's not the case, let's take a non-vegan diet, for example. You would be eating an animal that would normally, like let's take a cow, for example, would be normally eating grass off the ground and maybe normally ingesting that. To level out the playing field, farmers don't rely on the animal getting their B12 that way. They supplement the feed. So 90% of the B12 that's synthesized, I think in the US, is for animal agriculture. So it's actually given to the animal so that then it ends up in the products. It's like a lot of supplement. It's supplement, basically. So non-vegans are also getting their B12 supplement from animals, but you're getting a supplement as well. So because not vegans and vegetarians are not eating flesh that has been supplemented with B12, and we're also not eating produce in large enough quantities to really get enough of that B12, you just take a supplement, because we're not, again, eating vegetables directly off the ground covered in dirt.
Yeah. So
there is another source of B12 that and some, for example, soy milk most of the time is supplemented, or milks are supplemented or whatever. My almond milk that I buy is not. So I tend to eat a lot of nutritional yeast, which is like, for those of you who don't know, it's like a powdered yeast extract. Basically, it kind of looks like fish food, which doesn't sound appetizing, but it's like a flake. It's like yellow, and it gets incorporated into sauces to make, it's kind of tastes nutty and cheesy. So anything that's like cheese simulates the taste of cheese usually has nutritional yeast, or nooch as we call it. So if I eat a lot of nutritional yeast that week or that day, or I had a recipe of something that had a lot, I skip that. I normally take my B12 twice a week. So if I notice that I'm getting a lot of B12, I just skip the supplement. And so nutritional yeast contains a ton. I think it's like hundreds of % of your daily intake for like a tablespoon, which is ridiculous. And so you can usually tell if you eat too much, because it's otherwise known as riboflavin, which is like fluorescent yellow. And so usually if you eat a lot of nutritional yeast, or you take too much B12, you'll notice it when you go to the bathroom. You'll be like, whoa, oh wait. So I tend to gauge that way, I guess.
Yeah.
That may be too much information, but it's true.
No.
So yeah, just B12, but and I've had blood work done, and my blood work is all fine, and there's no problem. I'm not wanting for anything. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. So I think in that sense, I think we've kind of really talked about just how nutritionally, generally, like, with a vegan diet, you're not really missing out on too much. And as long as you eat the right variety of foods, and you still have a full diet of different things.
Just like any diet, really.
Yeah.
If you were non-vegan and all you ate was like bread, or all you ate was meat, or all you ate was milk, you would be missing stuff out too.
Yeah.
Like, if all I ate was one thing, that's not a really good way to make sure you're getting a good variety of nutrients and different types of fiber and different types of vitamins, is to just eat in season and pick fruits and vegetables and plants that are varied in their texture and their shape and their color. And that will usually help you out. And it's just, the produce section of the grocery store is so beautiful that it's kind of hard to walk through and not be like, oh, this. Yeah. So it's nice and it helps.
And this time of year, like in Canada especially, like we don't get fresh produce like from Canada all the times of the year, but this year is a great time for people to go to their farmers markets and local farm stands. And because, I mean, not only you're going to get really fresh food, you're going to know where that food grew. You're going to have much better understanding of like what their farming practices are like, and also the less it travels, the less less carbon footprint, the less water footprint. So environmentally, it's so good to go to your farmers markets and local farm stands. And this time of year here in Canada, it is such a great time. Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a market down at Exhibition Place here in Lethbridge, and it's all the local farmers that come in. They have all these different stands, and one thing that I tend to really love is golden beets. And there's one stand that's golden beets, and they're they look like suns. Like, they're just these beautiful orange, and they're really delicious roasted on salad. Like, I love that. Like, I love browsing, like, ooh, what do they have this week? And it's really nice. And also, you're in this age of like giant box stores and Walmarts selling groceries and things. It's really nice to support local businesses and just keep things local for sure. Yeah, I love farmers market.
Yeah, it's such a great way to do so many good things at once. Go to a farmer's market, right? You're buying local, you're supporting your local economy, you know, you're being better for the environment, you're being good for your health because you really know how it grew and all the good stuff about it. So it's so great.
We just love getting a coffee and like getting up kind of early on the weekend and like going, and it's just such a nice, like, fun errand, especially if it's a nice day outside.
I know.
It's really nice. I like it.
And I mean, for some people across the world that are watching, like, you guys have good weather all year long and you guys can be buying local food all the time. So, I mean, if you guys have that option, it's always a good option to take. I'm so jealous. Yeah. Okay. So, let's see what our next question is. Okay. So I think you sort of covered this, but like, so have you found it hard being a vegan? And then we'll kind of like to extend the question because you kind of covered it is like how about when you go out to eat? Do you find it hard to be vegan?
I'll say, so being vegan is not hard. Categorically, no, not hard at all. Going out, it depends on where you live, and I think it depends on your style, like what you're like as a person when you go out. So I live in southern Alberta. It is beef country. The word vegan doesn't resonate with a lot of people. There's really not there's no vegan restaurant. There are some places that have options, but you have to know about them in advance. So I think in much the same way that if you had an allergy or an intolerance or any sort of special dietary requirement, you sort of have to know where you're going out and just call in advance, check the menu. If you have good friends and you say, hey guys, like, what about this place? Like, they maybe don't have a lot of options. Like, might be nice to try this place instead. It doesn't have to be just a vegetarian or vegan restaurant. But sometimes just at least if you know that there's an option that's not green salad or French fries. So it depends. Definitely visiting people in Toronto and Victoria and Vancouver, no problem. Absolutely no problem. There's vegan everywhere. Everybody knows what it means. Nobody is like, what? So it's not difficult if you sort of know what you're doing. So like one of the things, like, I guess I wouldn't say rule because there are no rules, but the sort of inside joke of the vegan community is like, always pack a snack or eat a little bit before you go out, just in case the option isn't that good or there aren't any options or something, which is pretty rare. International food is so easy. Like sushi, vegetable sushi, no problem. Indian food is amazing. There's tons of vegetarian options, or they'll just make you a special dish. Excuse me, that happens all the time. So we go out for lab lunches and stuff, and Indian is really easy. We all go and everyone loves it, and there's always something to eat. Don't go hungry for sure. The best vegan restaurant in Lethbridge is my house, because I sometimes have a hard time with conventional, like, there's a lot of steakhouses and like pubs and things around here that just don't cater, but that's okay. It's not that hard. I think you just have to know where you're going and know in advance. But I should mention that maybe you found the same thing, or anybody who has a special diet has found that it's really changed the way that I go out to eat, not from a practical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. The going out process doesn't become about what I'm going to eat. It becomes about going out, and it becomes about having just social time. And you realize how much you focus on like what you're going to eat and putting so much importance on that process of picking something out of the menu and sitting down to eat it. You go out and you're like, it's fine. I'll just hang out and it's not a big deal. Millions of people go hungry in the world. I'm not going to go hungry. It's fine. I'll just eat before, eat after. We place so much importance on this going out process, which I never really realized how much I banked on having. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I'm just rambling.
No, it makes total sense. It's like a mindfulness thing. It's about being really mindful of like what are you enjoying about it, like being present in the moment and just being there with your friends or like with whoever you're going out with, and just enjoying their company and not only putting it on the food.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I mean, and like, it's true, like in bigger cities, it's quite easy. Like I'm in Toronto and like, it's very quite easy to find vegan restaurants. And even like, I find even in regular chain store restaurants now, like they have more and more vegan options. And I think like, and like you're saying, it's like about the mindset. Cause I think like, I also like, I have a quite specialized diet now. I'm very specific with what I eat and what I don't eat. But like, I find like, I thought it'd be a lot harder than it is. And
Not.
yeah,
It's weird.
it's like for the one thing is like I'm more like, yeah, I'm selective of where I go. But even if I go, like the other day I went somewhere by accident. Like I forgot that I had to be that I have to check. And then I went and I was like, oh God. And then I was like, but it worked out. Like there was always something. There's always something you can get. If you don't put so much importance that you're getting like if you don't focus on the fact that you're there to eat and you're just like, okay, I'll just eat something or I won't eat.
Just fill up the tank. It's
yes.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think it's all about mindset, and it's becoming easier. Like compared to like 10 years ago, it's so different.
And people understand what it means a lot more, and they understand the importance of having options. And sometimes I'm pretty surprised. Like even for example, like you can make something work. If you go to Subway, the white bread is vegan because the whole wheat one has honey in it. So if you don't eat honey, then don't have that one. And all the other ones have cheese and stuff on them. And then you just get a veggie sub and put like a ton of vegetables on there. The sub sauce is vegan, mustard, salt, pepper. That's all I get every time. And I'm so full by the end. And some people might be like, wow, that's really sad sub if it doesn't have cheese or meat or whatever on it. But I guess I don't really care. I guess you should stop caring. It's totally doable. Like if you're really stuck in a pinch, and a lot of places, coffee places, there's a Tim Hortons near my work that has soy milk now. So a lot of people are realizing, okay, we got to start carrying alternatives because people are lactose intolerant or people are vegan and vegetarian and don't eat certain things. And yeah, the companies and stuff are catching up to the demand, which is there. And it's increasing every day.
Yeah, and it's just gonna continually get better. And it's just about really changing how you look at things, and just I think your tastes also change. I find like I eat like I'm like a sandwich just full of vegetables. This to me is delicious. Like I don't have a problem with that. Like just with a bunch of vegetables and a little bit of dressing, or even just salt and pepper. Even I'll eat it.
It's so true, and when I was non-vegan, I would have heard someone say that and go, okay, yeah, whatever, bacon is delicious. Like, that's so sad. Like, how can that be? I don't like vegetables. It's so weird. Your taste buds really do change. For example, I used to hate cauliflower with a fiery passion. I used to it was the worst vegetable. And now I'm like obsessed with cauliflower. It's so weird. Your taste buds change. You stop craving certain things. Cheese is a really tough one for people to let go of, and that's because when you eat casein, which it's a milk-based protein, it goes into your digestive system and it gets modified into casomorphin, which has a lot of the same effects as morphine on your brain. So it's not anywhere near the same level, but it is literally addictive. So cheese is a tough one, but you stop craving it. Your taste buds change and you start looking at certain things for me personally is like not food anymore. Like I don't look at a steak and go, yeah, I miss that. Like your taste buds really do evolve and change, which is really nice. And then you start wanting to try other things and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's sort of the same thing when you go to like social gatherings with friends, right? Like if you go to people's houses or things like that, it's just I think you can speak about your experience, but I think like it's probably similar. You just like change your purpose of going is to hang out with people, and if they don't happen to have the food you can eat, you just focus on what you're there for.
Yeah, and going to social gatherings is actually really fun. Like I really like it. Anytime, for example, my work has like a barbecue or a potluck or something, nobody wants to be that person that's like, what are you going to make for me? Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Nobody does that. And, maybe they wouldn't know exactly what to do anyway. So I'm like, I'll just take the pressure off. Let me bring some stuff and blow your mind and feed you some delicious food. And people want to try. Like we had a barbecue one summer and I brought this company called Field Roast makes incredible wheat, like gluten-based sausages. And so I brought that, and everyone wanted to try them. And I don't know if they were like lying to my face, but most people were like, oh, this is pretty good. Or you bring desserts, like for someone's birthday to work. Like if you bring cupcakes or something, you make them vegan. People go, oh, is this vegan really? Like, yeah, this is a great opportunity to, you know, showcase how delicious and easy and not fussy vegan food is just by feeding people if you get the chance to. And social gatherings are a really good chance to do that. And just, you know, veganism is not hard. You're not going to become the person that's constantly asking for alternatives if you just bring it yourself and you're not fussed, and it's not hard. And it's a really great way to showcase that. And social gatherings are nice because then you get to watch people try food and go, it's vegan. Yeah. And most people are really receptive to that and they want to try it. And some people maybe take a little bit more convincing, but yeah, I don't mind. Social gatherings are really easy actually, because you just say, whatever, I'll just bring food.
Yeah, no, it's pretty easy, I think. Yeah. Sounds not too bad. And I mean, I'm the same. I'll bring things, or like I'll just like, I don't know, I find at least people that like when I go places generally, like they usually have something I can eat. Like there's some aspect of something. Yeah. Even if it's a barbecue, like yeah, maybe I could bring like a vegetarian burger or something, or you just eat the salads or something, you know, so.
And like you said, it really does change why you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you sort of realize that you would have been like kind of pouty or whatever, but maybe before, like, what do you mean there's something to eat? Like, I'm gonna go, and that's again, like maybe eat a little snack before just in case, or keep Cliff Bars in your bag or granola or a piece of fruit or whatever. It doesn't become about that at all anymore. It really changes. And I don't think that's a bad thing too. Food is a very social thing, and it's like really important culturally and stuff, but it's not everything. And you can really get by, and it's like not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And then the next thing I want to talk about, it's something I hear a lot, and that's just like, do you ever feel pressure from people to eat non-vegan food? So for example, family or friends or like things like that. Do you ever feel the pressure, and how do you deal with it?
No, not generally. I'm very thankful that my family is really supportive. My mom's actually vegan.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, so that's really helpful. When I come home, there's like 2 sets of food. There's like my brother and my dad eat this, or my mom will make like the sides will be vegan, for example. Or yeah, and then so we can have those, and then we'll just have our own thing. My family's really, really supportive. I think
so good.
Older generations maybe don't understand so much. My one set of grandparents is pretty great. My other set of grandparents, I don't think they quite understand. Like, for example, if you say like, oh, I'm vegan, I don't eat meat. They're like, oh, I'll make you some rice, but I'll make it with chicken broth so it tastes good. You're like, no. So, but that's okay. It just takes time to just explain to people maybe a little bit more. But most people are pretty supportive.
Yeah.
I think first, people, because it's an alternative diet, I think, and there's this bizarre stigma against vegans being extreme or militant or whatever. And there are those people that exist, unfortunately, giving vegans a bad name. But people want to talk. It's so funny. Like, a lot of the times I would go out for beers or whatever with friends, and it came up out of nowhere by other people who want to jab and talk about it and make jokes, like sometimes lighthearted, and you kind of brush it off and whatever. But for example, if there's like a pizza, somebody will be like, oh, do you want some cheese pizza? And you laugh and they're like, haha, very funny. Sometimes there's a bit of a jab like that, or you hear things like, oh, I'll just eat your portion of meat, haha, more for me. I don't know that constitutes people pressuring me to eat differently, but maybe for some people it can wear them down, and it's a jab. Yeah. So if you have a thick skin and you feel strongly about why you're eating the way you're eating, then it's like water off a duck's back. You kind of go, okay, how very funny. And those jokes get really, really old after a while. So I've never felt like pressure. No pressure but I guess you kind of have to maybe watch out if you're very conscious and you really, really care strongly about what you're eating and you're making exceptions. Mm-hmm. Not hesitate to ask, like, hey, can you just pass me the ingredients? Do you mind if I look at the ingredients? Or how did you make this? Or whatever. And most people will sometimes make mistakes, but they're really honest mistakes because they didn't realize. And they're just so used to eating what they're eating that they're like, oh, you should have some. I'm sure it's vegan. It's probably fine, but they maybe don't realize that there are some ingredients they don't recognize or whatever. But no, nobody has pressured me, I don't think. No.
Yeah, no, that's
not any, which is nice.
Yeah.
And there's so many different types of like alternative diets out there. Some people don't eat certain things for religious reasons. Some people have allergies. Some people have intolerances. And I think that vegan just kind of gets lumped into that, which can sometimes be frustrating and then sometimes really nice because people are used to being more and more accommodating as there are all these different types of diets around. So I think it just gets easier for people as well as they're like learning about all these other diets, and it's not a problem.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, same with me. Like my family's always been very understanding and friends have always been understanding, but I think I've heard from some people who've said it's a little bit tough. Like sometimes they feel pressure. And one thing that I have felt a little bit is like sometimes when you go out places, like to family friends' homes or like just people and like, and especially in the Indian culture, it's very like, you can't say no to food. Like it's a little bit rude. But like, I think you have to get used to the concept that like, your intention is good and you got to do it in the nicest way possible. But like, that's the only thing I've ever found. But other than that, like, I'm same with you. Like you just learn to handle it differently. And I think now I'm not as sensitive to asking people like, what's in your food because I have to now. So
it takes a bit of practice and a bit of coming out of your shell and not being shy to just sort of, stand. It's just about standing up for what you want and putting your foot down about it in a nice way, of course. But same thing for, I'm sure if I ever go visit that one set of grandparents, I'm going to have to maybe be a little bit more patient and just reiterate things a little bit more. And but it's like relating back to this whole, like, food is such a cultural thing. I think another maybe issue that some people worry about when they go or thinking about going plant-based is, what about my cultural traditions? What about, like, I'm French Canadian. It's like meat and potatoes, like meat pie, meat this, meat that, sugar pie that has cream in it. What do you do? You have to maybe get creative and start to come up with like fun, it's like a challenge. Like, how can I make this vegan? Or some people feel like they have to break up with that part of their culture because food is so personal, and everybody's individual journey is a little bit different. Mine has not been so much of a problem because my family's pretty accommodating, but I can definitely understand, like you said, like maybe pressure coming from inside of yourself to keep a part of your cultural heritage alive and conform to the tradition that people don't mean any harm, but maybe they don't realize it's kind of a conflict, and you sometimes have to deal with that.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of, most of it I think it's like internal. I think it's like you have to be okay with understanding your reasons and not feeling bad about it. I mean, like Indian food, like food wise, like you can, like, a lot of people are vegetarian already, so it's not even that hard. So it's not been too bad, but I think everyone's journey is different. But I think everyone just having to be comfortable with themselves and just being okay with handling, what people say, not to take it too seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And I find maybe if you're out somewhere and people don't really know what to do, and it's becoming kind of, maybe I like offer to cook sometimes. Like, I'll be like, oh, why don't you let me make you something really delicious? Or why don't you just let me do it. It's fine. I can help or whatever. You can offer suggestions. Or if it's like at a relative's house or something, I will just offer to make my own stuff so that they don't feel like I'm imposing and forcing them to make me anything. Like, I will conform to you. Like, let me adapt to what you're already doing. And then it's like maybe takes a bit of the pressure off, and maybe if that's a source of conflict for people, like, oh, I'm gonna have to make extra meals for you now or something. No, don't worry, I got it. It's not a problem.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good kind of segue to asking, so what are some common, I think we want to say common myths that you have heard about veganism? And like, what are some ones that you've heard and you want to like bring some light to today?
I think maybe people think that vegans are not strong, or not getting full nutritional profile, like you're not getting anything that you need. And the first thing I would say is, like, look at any vegan athlete. There's NFL linebackers, there's star pro athletes out there, there's Ironmen and women and lots of amazing athletes who are not just like getting by on a vegan diet, but really thriving, and they're finding the recovery times are a lot better. They feel stronger, they feel more energized. Their bodies they have more energy, they sleep better. So vegans are not weak. You're not frail. And also I think the big myth is probably that this one I hear, well, there's so many, oh my gosh, I can go on forever. That veganism is boring and it's like depriving yourself, and that vegan food is dull and tasteless and boring. And I think we've covered that in great detail, that it's really not, and it's really about how you make it really interesting and fun, just like any food. I think any diet can be boring if you make it boring. One that I've heard a lot is that it's not natural to be a vegan, or maybe you've heard the same thing. People will point to evolution and the fact that humans evolved large brains because we started eating meat, which is one. Or, for example, the fact that humans have canines means that we're meant to eat meat. And I'm not an evolutionary biologist by any means. I have read a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But to that, I might say there are a lot of things that are natural to a lot of species. Lots of species eat their young. Lots of species do a lot of horrible things to each other and stuff. And if we really based our behavior on what's natural out there, for example, lions eat meat, therefore it's nature, it's natural. Lions are obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat. That's part of their biology. But we've shown, as we've learned a lot more about nutrition, and we understand now, because of the advances of science, because of the advances in nutritional sciences, we know we can get all of the nutrients that we need from a plant-based diet. So it's not necessary anymore to consume what is really a luxury. And if you think about how we're going to feed the world, we have this giant hunger problem. Meat is like the least efficient way probably to feed all these people. So, natural is not always the best thing. And the canine thing is kind of laughable. I mean, can you see my canines? I can't. They're there.
Yeah.
But look at like other animals that have giant, look at hippos, look at gorillas, look at those canines, and they're there for defense. They're not there for ripping into meat or anything. Herbivores, jaws move back and forth, side to side, and our molars in the back are flat, which are really good for grinding plants. And then look at a carnivore, look at a big cat, like a lion or a dog or something, for example, and all of their canines all the way to the back are sharp, and their jaws do not move side to side like, a ruminant or an herbivore. The length of the digestive tract, for example, is another one. Herbivores or omnivores have longer digestive tracts because of the processing time that it takes to digest plant matter. It goes through your microflora, which is like my area of research, and all the time it takes to digest fiber versus a carnivore's digestive tract is quite a bit shorter. All these evolutionary reasons, I think, if people maybe do a little bit of extra reading and look into it, and all of that aside, I think even if it was natural, let's look at what it's doing to our environment. Let's look at what it's doing to our health and the health of these animals, especially because we know now we can get by on a plant-based diet. It seems unnecessary to eat meat. I really go on. I think all of these issues are sort of tied together. But yeah, there's a lot of myths or misconceptions out there for sure. The big one being that vegan food is boring, which is really not. Yeah. And any other myths out there as well, like that you've come across? I'm sure you've come across a ton.
Yeah, I think like the ones you covered are like probably like strong ones that I've heard that people say often, and I think it's just like, I think the main thing that we want to like get across to people, I think, is just that like it doesn't have to, like, I think some people, like, I think you may have said it earlier, that people like connect it with extremism, and that's the same thing with like environmental things, or like people who are vegetarian, all these things, they put that as extreme, but it's really just, you're just like you're doing what's good for your health, you're a caring person, you're caring about the world, like that. You don't, I think like putting those connections like to extremism, it really makes people skeptical and also less likely to do it. And like, it doesn't have to be extreme, and it doesn't have to be such a, like, I think Rupa and I talk about it a lot, that like people always say like, you know, they'll call environmental like tree huggers and things like that. And they put them as like these, everyone is like going out and like causing havoc. And like, that's not always the case. You're just trying to be a good human. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm, you know, as being a vegan, you're caring about your health and you're caring about the world. And that makes you a good person. That doesn't make you an extremist.
That's so funny that people associate veganism with being extreme.
Yeah.
I'm eating a banana. Like, what is extreme? What is extreme about, like, what, let's look at the flip side of that, you know, is maybe it's a bit graphic, but like slaughtering an animal, and isn't that extreme? Like having to go through all the lengths to raise an animal and dump all of these resources into making this animal the size that you want it, and then having to look that animal in the eye and kill that animal. Isn't that extreme? That seems more extreme than cooking up some chickpeas. And I don't know. There are all the different flavors of vegans out there. There are the really hardcore, militant, outspoken vegans, and we need them to draw attention to things sometimes in certain contexts. But that is not, you know, I don't even think about my diet anymore. I don't sit there and, you know, have a little internal debate with myself every time I go to reach for something. It's just, I've just changed my habits. That's really all it is. Mm-hmm. It's not, I just find it so strange that it's associated with extremism, which maybe coming from a non-vegan standpoint, making that change seems so drastic. But maybe some people really do cold turkey, and some people take it one thing at a time. Maybe they'll take beef out, for example. I know lots of people who have done that. And beef is huge in, you know, greenhouse gas production and the environment. Beef is a big culprit. Or some people maybe will swap out, maybe you'll reach for almond milk instead of cow's milk. Even little things like that. I don't think, maybe making all of those changes at once seems extreme, but I would ask then people to reflect on what seems extreme in the globe, in the greater context of, you know, caring for the environment and for each other and stuff. It doesn't seem to be that big of a change to make, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that the more we talk about it and the more we have conversations like this, the better it'll be. You know, we just like dispelling the myths and talking about how it can be easy. It's not even that hard to do it. And it's all a mindset game. It's about like changing your habits, changing how you think about things. And that in itself is game changing. And I think you can make, like, the capacity of humans is mind boggling. Like, it's actually, like, we have the capacity to do so much, and we just have to believe in our potential. Like, we have the potential. Like, everyone has the potential to make a difference in this world. And it's simple things like this that we can do.
And one person can really have a trickle effect.
Yeah.
Since I've been vegan, my mom has gone vegan. I've had 2 friends go vegan, and that feels pretty cool. Even if it's just the 4 of us making financial decisions at the grocery. Oh, hi, buddy. Making financial decisions at the grocery store and making choices about maybe the cleaning products that you're using, or the cosmetics, or the clothing that you're, even all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And just making it a topic of conversation and get people thinking about our resource usage in general. And that can be food, and it can be all the things that you put in. And I think most people are starting to think about, you know, the source of where their things are coming from. And it's a conversation about trying to keep resource usage at a minimum, or at least be smart about it. Yeah. And it's just part of that conversation, in the same way that you might switch out your light bulbs or switch out your shower head or whatever. It's just part of it. It's just another thing that you can do. It's part of, you know, making conscious decisions.
I think it's just like, that's such an important thing to say. Like, I think it's just like, we all can make conscious decisions in every aspect of our life. And I think like we always like at Water Wellness Project, we always say this, and this is that you speak with your money. So like every action, every dollar you spend, you're basically saying that I agree. Like if you buy from a company, you're basically saying, I agree with your values. I agree with what you're doing. And you're telling that company, keep doing it. That's why like I stopped shopping at some, I'm not going to like call out names of companies right now, but
Yeah.
there's certain stores, big box stores, I don't like what they're doing, and I don't buy from their stores anymore. And like, I'm much more mindful of what companies I'm supporting, you know, and because I think the only change we can make is like money speaks wonders, and we have to be mindful of how we're spending our money and where it's going. And that's even in terms of food. Like, if we stop putting all of our money in the meat industry, I think it would change too, right? Like right now, the beef industry is so huge. And I mean, and that's why they're having, you know, they have to make industrialized systems to produce meat from the cows. And I think the more we kind of take away the money from that industry and maybe put in other industries, like we're not, and even people say, oh, you're taking away jobs. Well, you can take those jobs and put them, you can train these farmers to do other types of farming. And I think that being mindful of these things, I think that's in everything. Like, I don't think we should get, I'm not going to get off too much off topic, but I think like in anything, I think being mindful that like we can always retrain and we can always pivot our systems to better practices. Like we're like saying like certain industries, oh, well, we have to promote it because it's our main money, but we can retrain, we can pivot a little bit, change what we're doing, and help our economy and help our planet at the same time. And we just need people, leaders, who are putting that as a priority. And I think that's the most important thing.
What's happening in the world right now in terms of energy is a really great example. I'm sure you're like alluding to that. Like certain, you know, people seem to be quite pro green energy or renewable energy, and watching politicians make decisions that are going to help shift jobs and the economy towards a greener, more sustainable path. And then there are others that would choose to support other types of energy, which doesn't seem to be quite that popular. And of course, there are jobs, like you mentioned, that are having to shift. And there always will be a shift when you make changes. That's part of what change is all about. But, you know, we look back on history and think, look at all the changes that we've made for the better. I can't believe we used to do things that way. Now we're in such a better place and we're continuing to learn and make more mindful decisions. I think that's really important to just stay plugged into the conversation globally and what's going on, and changing your diet is like, look at what's happening to the dairy industry, for example. Like go to your dairy case and look at all the soy products and almond products and cashew and hemp and rice and all these different, look at all the different kinds of milks out there. And it's a huge, look at all the different kinds of meat alternatives that are out there. Like, you know, I won't get too much into it because it's my place of work, but, you know, the government is aware that the public perception of, for example, beef and cattle, the industry is, I don't want to say in danger, but people are becoming more and more aware of the impact, and the government is having to deal with that. It's happening in conversations in boardrooms and meetings, and it's definitely having an impact. Yeah, as more and more people make decisions, it's definitely.
Yeah, there's so much change going on, and I think like a quotation I really love is just saying that like any change is difficult in the beginning, messy in between, but then gorgeous at the end. And I think it's like, it's just that you can create so much change. We all, change is natural. Like we all change, the world changes. That's the only thing we know for sure. Things are going to change. And, you know, just being aware that it may be challenging, but the end effect of it is going to be so good. And that's the same thing as changing your diet, right? Yeah, maybe in the beginning you look at it like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. And in between, yeah, I guess it's uncomfortable sometimes, you know, like just making that shift and keeping committed to it. Yeah, it can be difficult, but in the end, you'll love it. And it feels good to do good things, you know, doing good feels good sometimes, you know? So.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't look back on personally, my journey was not necessarily that difficult.
Yeah.
But I look at others and it's not that hard. Like every conversation I've ever had with any vegan it's not like, oh, I went vegan for a week and I had to go back because I just couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all of them make the change and go, yeah, it's not that bad. Like, you know, they gave food away or they finished the food that they had and then just bought a vegan replacement instead, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that hard. Or even if you do that one product at a time, or you try different things, like slowly but surely change happens.
Yeah.
And
So good. Yeah, so I think what we'll do, just be mindful of people's time, and your time, of course. We'll just end off with, is there a final message you want to leave people about being vegan? Something that you want to leave our audience with?
We've definitely covered, you know, I could talk about this forever. We've definitely covered a lot of the things, but I'll come back to something I said earlier, which is nothing feels as good as when your morals and your values match your actions, or vice versa. And you can look into yourself, and there's no yucky feeling of guilt. There's none of that. It feels awesome to know that you're making a change, even if it's just you. You know that in your heart, in your mind, you've made the best decision that you can, and you're actually contributing and doing your best, and hopefully being an example or leading by example. That's a really great way to affect change as well, and just be the change. And yeah, just veganism is great. I don't know. It feels really great once you make the change.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's so great. I mean, like you said, the quotation that people love to say is, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's exactly what you're saying. Another quotation, I like to keep it as quotation. Everyone says quote still.
This is St. Patrick.
I know. Exactly. Our English teacher in high school taught us this, and I still say quotation. But a quotation from Gandhi that I love is, the difference between what we do and what we're capable of doing would suffice to solve most of the world's problems. And that is so true. And I think, like, just the little change we can make, you know, can make a massive impact.
It has a ripple effect. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
People see that it's really easy and delicious and fun, and it just takes the pressure off maybe and helps others. So
yeah, really, it's so good. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for joining us today and having a conversation like this. I think what you said and your story is going to touch so many people and make a huge impact in their lives. So thank you.
So thank you so much, and I've been happy to chat anytime. I could really go on forever. So.
Yeah, well, we can cover different topics sometimes. So
sure, anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome, and take care, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.